Michael drove through empty Chicago streets at 3 a.m., the same route he'd taken for 2 years. His wife Sarah would be asleep on the couch again. Another night of distance between them. He told himself their marriage was just quiet, not broken. But tonight, searching for a phone charger in their bedroom closet, he found an envelope that shattered everything. Birth certificates showing Michael James Carter and Sarah Jane Carter, born March 15, 1990. Twins, separated at 10 months old, and a DNA test confirming 99.9% sibling match. His wife was his sister, and somehow she'd known all along.
Quick pause. Before we continue, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? If you're enjoying these stories, make sure to hit subscribe, because tomorrow's episode is absolutely mind-blowing.
The taxi's headlights cut through the pre-dawn darkness as Michael Carter pulled into the parking space behind his apartment building. 3:47 a.m. Another 12-hour shift done. His back ached, his eyes burned, but this was the life he'd chosen, or rather, the life that had chosen him after Emma died. Emma. 3 years gone, and her name still landed like a punch to his chest. Michael killed the engine and sat in the silence. Through the second-floor window, he could see the faint glow of the lamp Sarah always left on. She'd be on the couch, curled under the gray blanket her adoptive mother had given them as a wedding gift. For the past year, Sarah had been sleeping there most nights, claiming she didn't want to wake him when he came home late. Michael had stopped questioning it. Their marriage had settled into a comfortable numbness, two people sharing space, but not lives. He climbed the stairs slowly, keys jingling in his hand. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. Sarah lay motionless on the couch, her dark hair spilled across the armrest, face turned away. Michael stood watching her for a moment, wondering when exactly they'd stopped being a couple and started being roommates. In the bedroom, Michael dropped his jacket on the chair and plugged in his phone. Dead battery again. He needed to find the car charger before tomorrow's shift. He remembered seeing it in the closet last week, tangled with Sarah's collection of scarves and old sweaters. Michael opened the closet door and knelt down, pushing aside shoeboxes and plastic storage bins. His hand brushed against something wedged behind a stack of sweaters. A brown manila envelope, thick and worn at the edges. Curiosity pulled at him. Sarah was intensely private about certain things, never talking about her childhood in detail, always changing the subject when he asked about her adoptive family. Michael had learned not to push. Everyone had their secrets, their painful memories they preferred to keep buried. But something about this envelope felt different, important. Michael pulled it out and sat back on his heels. No label, no markings, just the envelope, sealed and heavy. His fingers hovered over the clasp. This was wrong, going through his wife's private things. But then again, married couples weren't supposed to have secrets this deliberately hidden. He opened it. The first document was a birth certificate. Chicago, Mercy Hospital, March 15, 1990. Name, Michael James Carter. Mother, Linda Carter, age 16. Father, unknown. Michael's breath caught. He'd seen his birth certificate before, the one his adoptive parents had shown him when he turned 18, explaining he'd been adopted as an infant. But that certificate had listed his adoptive parents' names. This one was different, original. His hands trembled as he pulled out the second document. Another birth certificate. Same hospital, same date, same mother. Name, Sarah Jane Carter. Mother, Linda Carter, age 16. Father, unknown. The room tilted. Michael read the words again, then again, trying to make them mean something different. Sarah Jane Carter. Born the same day as him. Same mother, same hospital. Twins. Michael's mind reeled. This couldn't be right. Sarah couldn't be. They weren't.
He dumped the envelope's contents onto the bedroom floor. Adoption papers. Michael James Carter, adopted by Robert and Margaret Carter at 10 months. Sarah Jane Carter, adopted by David and Helen Walsh at 10 months. Separated, sent to different families, different states. And then the DNA test results stated 2 months before he'd met Sarah at the taxi depot. Probability of sibling relationship, 99.9%. Michael's stomach lurched. He scrambled to his feet and barely made it to the bathroom before vomiting. He knelt on the cold tile, forehead pressed against the toilet seat, body shaking. Sarah was his sister, his twin sister, and he'd married her. They'd been married for 2 years, 2 years of living together, sleeping in the same bed, until recently when Sarah had started avoiding him, pulling away, sleeping on the couch. Now he understood why. She'd known. She'd known from the beginning. Michael got to his feet and splashed cold water on his face. In the mirror, his reflection looked like a stranger. 35 years old, and his entire life had just been revealed as a lie. Questions crashed through his mind. When did Sarah find out? Why did she approach him at the depot that night? Why did she marry him knowing they were siblings? And the most terrifying question, what else did she know? Michael grabbed his jacket and keys. He couldn't be here, couldn't look at her, couldn't breathe in this apartment that suddenly felt like a crime scene. He left the documents scattered on the bedroom floor. Let her wake up and see them. Let her know that he knew. The taxi became his refuge. Michael drove aimlessly through Chicago's empty streets, watching the city wake up around him. Joggers appeared in the parks. Coffee shops turned on their lights. The world continued as if nothing had changed, while Michael's entire existence had collapsed. He ended up at the lakefront, parking in the empty lot overlooking Lake Michigan. Dawn broke across the water, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, beautiful and indifferent. Michael pulled out his phone. 17 missed calls from Sarah, 12 voicemails. He deleted them all without listening. His wedding ring felt like a brand on his finger. He twisted it, started to pull it off, then stopped. What was the legal status of their marriage now? Was it even valid? Could you unknowingly marry your own sibling? The nausea returned. Michael opened the car door and dry heaved onto the pavement. When he finally sat back, wiping his mouth with his sleeve, he noticed an elderly man walking his dog nearby, watching with concern. He waved him off. Everything's fine, just a rough night, and closed the door. Nothing was fine. Nothing would ever be fine again. His phone buzzed with a new text from Sarah. Please come home, I can explain everything. Michael stared at the message. Explain? What possible explanation could make this okay? What words could erase the fact that he'd been sleeping with his sister?
Another text. I know what you found. Please let me tell you the truth. The truth. As if truth meant anything anymore. Michael turned off his phone and leaned back against the seat. The sun climbed higher, and the parking lot filled with morning visitors. Families. Couples. Normal people living normal lives. He thought about Emma. Beautiful, kind Emma who'd loved him completely. Emma who died 3 years ago, hit by a bus while crossing the street. The police said she'd slipped on the wet pavement, lost her balance, fell into traffic. A tragic accident. Michael had been destroyed. 6 months of barely functioning, of working himself to exhaustion to avoid feeling anything. And then Sarah had appeared, like an answer to a prayer he hadn't known he was praying. She needed a ride from the taxi depot, her car broken down. They'd talked during the drive. She was easy to talk to, understanding in a way that felt natural. They'd met for coffee the next week, then dinner, then more dinners. Sarah had been patient with his grief, never pushing, just being there, solid, reliable, present. They'd married at City Hall 6 months later, no big ceremony. Michael couldn't bear the thought of a celebration without Emma's memory haunting it. Sarah had understood. She always understood. Now Michael realized why. Sarah hadn't been understanding. She'd been guilty. She'd been hiding something so massive that everything else had been built on quicksand. His phone buzzed again, despite being turned off. Battery must have had just enough charge. This time it wasn't Sarah. Unknown number. Against his better judgment, Michael answered. Yeah? Michael Carter. A man's voice, professional but warm. Who's asking? My name is Thomas Reed. I'm a private investigator. I was hired 6 months ago by Linda Carter before she passed away. She was looking for her children, twins she gave up for adoption 35 years ago. I found you and your sister Sarah. I need to talk to you both. It's urgent. It's about your sister and about Emma. What about Emma? Not over the phone. Can we meet? Today? It's important, Michael. Everything you think you know, it's not the whole story. Michael closed his eyes. Where? Thomas Reed's words echoed in Michael's head. Everything you think you know, it's not the whole story. How could there be more? He'd just discovered he'd married his own sister. What else could possibly... Michael's phone buzzed again. Sarah. Before you meet with Thomas, you need to hear it from me first. I didn't just know we were siblings. I knew about Emma. I was there that night. Michael, I killed her, and that's why I married you.
Michael sat frozen in the driver's seat, staring at Sarah's text message. The words seemed to rearrange themselves each time he read them, but their meaning stayed brutally clear. I killed her. His Emma? Sarah had killed Emma? The phone buzzed with another message. Please come home before you meet Thomas. You deserve to hear the truth from me, not from him. I'm begging you. Michael's hands tightened around the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. Every instinct screamed at him to drive away, far away, somewhere Sarah could never find him. But beneath the horror and rage, something else stirred. The need to understand. To hear her say it out loud. He started the engine. The drive back to the apartment took 15 minutes but felt like hours. Michael's mind spun through scenarios, each one worse than the last. Had Sarah killed Emma deliberately? Had she known who Michael was even then? How long had she been planning this nightmare? When he reached the apartment, he sat in the parking lot for 10 minutes, building the courage to go inside. Finally, he climbed the stairs and opened the door. Sarah stood in the center of the living room, still in her pajamas, eyes red and swollen. The documents from the envelope were spread across the coffee table like evidence at a crime scene. She'd been crying. Michael could see the tear tracks on her cheeks, but her face was set with grim determination. "Thank you for coming back," she whispered. Michael closed the door behind him but stayed near it, ready to leave. Talk. Sarah wrapped her arms around herself. Where do I start? The beginning. When did you know we were siblings? 3.5 years ago. Her voice was barely audible. I did one of those DNA ancestry tests, just curious about my background. The adoptive parents who raised me, the Walshes, they never hid that I was adopted, but they didn't know anything about my birth family. The test connected me to you, my twin brother, living in Chicago. Michael's jaw clenched. And you decided to what? Find me? Stalk me? I researched you, Sarah admitted. Social media, public records. I found your Facebook profile. Saw pictures of you with Emma. She was beautiful, Michael. And the way you looked at her in those photos, her voice cracked. You looked so happy. I didn't want to intrude on that. I just wanted to know you existed. To see from a distance that my twin brother had a good life. Bullshit. The word came out harsh. You married me, Sarah. You didn't just watch from a distance. I didn't plan this. Sarah's voice rose, desperate. I never meant for any of this to happen. I was going to leave you alone. I was going to let you have your perfect life with Emma, but then... She stopped, pressing her hand against her mouth. But then you killed her. Sarah flinched like he'd struck her. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "It was an accident. I swear to God, Michael, it was an accident." "Tell me." Michael's voice was cold, emotionless. Inside, he was screaming, but he couldn't let himself feel it. Not yet. "Tell me exactly what happened." Sarah moved to the couch and sat down heavily, staring at her hands. Michael remained standing, keeping distance between them. 3 years ago, I came to Chicago. I told myself it was just to see you once, just once, and then I'd go back to Milwaukee and leave you alone. I found out where you lived, where you worked. I followed you for a few days. I know how that sounds, crazy, stalker behavior, but you have to understand, I'd spent my whole life feeling like something was missing, like half of me was gone, and then I found you, and I just wanted to be near you, even if you never knew I existed, to see from a distance that my twin brother had a good life. Bullshit. Michael said nothing. One night, I followed you to a restaurant. You were with Emma. You looked so happy together, laughing, holding hands. I sat in my car across the street and watched through the window. I should have left then, but I couldn't. I just kept watching. Sarah's hands twisted together in her lap. After dinner, you walked Emma to the corner and kissed her goodbye. You went to get your taxi. You were working that night. Emma walked toward the pharmacy on State Street. I don't know what I was thinking. I wanted to see her up close, maybe. Or I wanted to understand what made her so special that you loved her so much. I started my car and drove slowly down the street, following her. Michael's chest felt tight. He couldn't breathe properly. There was a parking spot open near the pharmacy. I pulled in too fast. I wasn't paying attention. My front bumper jumped the curb slightly, nothing major. But Emma was walking right there on the sidewalk. She startled when my car lurched forward. She stepped backward, lost her footing. Don't. Michael's voice broke. Don't tell me she died because you were parking a fucking car. There was a shopping bag on the sidewalk. Someone had left it there. Emma stepped back onto it. Her foot slipped, and she fell into the street. The bus was right there, Michael. Right there. I saw the whole thing. I heard the impact. I sat in my car and watched your fiancée die because I was too curious, too selfish to just leave you alone. The room spun. Michael grabbed the doorframe to steady himself. Emma hadn't just slipped on wet pavement like the police had said. She'd been startled by Sarah's car. If Sarah hadn't been there, hadn't been following her... I didn't stop. Sarah's confession continued, each word like a knife. I should have gotten out, called for help, stayed at the scene, but I panicked. I drove away. The police investigation concluded it was an accident. She'd slipped and fell into traffic. No witnesses mentioned my car because it happened so fast. I got away with it. Michael stared at her. This woman, his wife, his sister, the person he'd shared a bed with for 2 years, had killed the love of his life and then walked into his life as if she had the right to be there. Why? His voice was raw. Why did you come back? Why did you approach me at the depot? Sarah looked up at him, tears streaming freely now. Because I destroyed you. I followed you for months after Emma died. I watched you fall apart. You stopped eating. You stopped sleeping. You worked 20-hour shifts like you were trying to exhaust yourself to death. I did that to you. I killed the woman you loved, and then I watched you die slowly from the loss. So you decided to replace her. Michael's laugh was bitter, broken. I thought I could save you, Sarah whispered. I know how insane that sounds, but you were my brother, my twin, my other half, and I destroyed your life. I felt responsible for keeping you alive, for making sure you didn't completely fall apart. By lying to me, by marrying me, by committing... Michael couldn't even say the word. Incest. Sarah said it for him, her voice hollow. I know what we did. I know it's wrong, Michael, Why do you think I've been sleeping on the couch for a year? Why do you think I can barely look at you anymore? The guilt is killing me. Every day I wake up and remember that I'm living a lie, that I trapped you in this nightmare with me. You could have told me the truth. When? Sarah's voice rose. When should I have told you? The first night we met? Hi, I'm your sister, and by the way, I killed your fiancé. After our third date? Before the wedding? After? When exactly is the right time to confess something like that? Before you married me, Michael shouted. Before you let this go so far that... He stopped, pressing his palms against his eyes. We had sex, Sarah. Multiple times. You're my sister, and I know. Her voice broke completely. I know, and I hate myself for it. I hate myself every single day. Silence filled the apartment. Heavy, suffocating. Finally, Michael lowered his hands. The investigator. Thomas, what does he know? Sarah's face paled even further. I don't know. I didn't hire him. If he says Linda Carter hired him before she died, our birth mother, then he might have found out about me, about what I did. Maybe he found evidence from the accident. I don't know. Michael pulled out his phone and checked the time. Thomas had suggested meeting at noon at a coffee shop downtown. It was 11:30 now. I'm going to meet him, Michael said. Alone. Michael, no. He cut her off. You've lied to me for 2 years. You killed Emma, and then you wormed your way into my life, manipulated me into... He couldn't finish. I'm going to hear what Thomas has to say, and then I'm going to figure out what the hell to do about all of this. What are you going to do about us? Sarah asked quietly. There is no us. Michael opened the door. There never was. You made sure of that. He left before she could respond, taking the stairs 2 at a time. In the parking lot, he sat in his taxi and forced himself to breathe slowly, in through the nose, out through the mouth, like Emma had taught him when he'd had panic attacks about his dissertation in grad school. Emma. God, Emma. Michael started the engine and drove toward downtown, his mind numb. Part of him wanted to just keep driving, leave Chicago, leave Sarah, leave this whole nightmare behind. But he needed answers. He needed to understand the full scope of what had been done to him. The coffee shop was a small place, tucked between a bookstore and a dry cleaner. Michael arrived 10 minutes early and ordered black coffee he couldn't taste. He sat at a corner table, watching the door. At noon exactly, a man in his early 40s walked in, tall, graying hair, wearing a dark suit that looked government-issued. He scanned the coffee shop, made eye contact with Michael, and headed over. Michael Carter? Michael nodded. Thomas Reed. He extended his hand. Michael didn't shake it. Thomas withdrew his hand smoothly and sat down. Thank you for meeting me. You said you have information about my sister and about Emma. I do. But first, I need to know, has Sarah told you anything about the night Emma died? Michael's jaw tightened. She told me she was there, that her car startled Emma and caused her to fall into traffic. Thomas nodded slowly. What else? That she's been living with guilt ever since. That she married me to save me from grief. Michael's voice dripped with bitterness. Oh, and that she's my twin sister, which makes our marriage both illegal and disgusting. The marriage can be annulled, Thomas said quietly. That's the easy part. But Michael, there's more to the story. Sarah told you part of the truth, but not all of it. Michael's stomach dropped. What do you mean? Thomas tapped his tablet, pulling up a video file. Before I show you this, I need you to understand something. I was a detective with Chicago PD for 15 years before I went private. 3 years ago, I was one of the responding officers to Emma's accident. Something about the case bothered me, small details that didn't quite add up, but the investigation was closed quickly. Accidental death, no witnesses, no evidence of foul play. Get to the point. 6 months ago, I was hired by Linda Carter, your birth mother. She was dying of cancer and wanted to find the twins she'd given up for adoption. She wanted to leave you both letters explaining why she'd had to let you go.
I found you and Sarah easily enough through public records and DNA databases. Thomas paused. But while researching Sarah, I found something. She'd been in Chicago 3 years ago. Her credit card records showed purchases near State Street on the same night Emma died. That triggered my old instincts. I started digging deeper. He turned the tablet toward Michael. This is CCTV footage from a store across the street from where Emma died. The police never pulled it because they'd already determined it was an accident. But I did. Thomas pressed play. The video showed a dark street, time-stamped 9:47 p.m. Michael recognized the location, the pharmacy where Emma was heading. The footage was grainy, black and white, but clear enough. Emma appeared, walking along the sidewalk, her phone in her hand. Then a car pulled into frame, parking at the curb. The front bumper didn't jump the curb, it parked normally. Emma kept walking, didn't even look at the car. Michael's heart pounded. That's not what Sarah said. Keep watching. Emma reached the corner. She turned, looking back the way she had come, as if she'd forgotten something. Then she stepped off the curb, not backward in fright, but forward deliberately, and started to cross the street. The bus appeared from the left side of the frame. Emma was looking at her phone, not at traffic. She didn't see it coming. She stepped into its path. The impact happened off camera, but Michael could see the moment of collision from the way people on the sidewalk reacted, rushing toward the street. She wasn't startled by Sarah's car. She just stepped into traffic. It was an accident, Thomas confirmed. A genuine, tragic accident. Sarah's car had nothing to do with it. Sarah didn't kill Emma. Emma's death was no one's fault. I couldn't breathe. But Sarah said... Sarah lied, Thomas closed the tablet. Or more accurately, Sarah convinced herself of a lie. She was there that night, probably watching from her car, like she told you. She saw Emma die. And in her grief and guilt over stalking you, over being there at all, she convinced herself she had caused it. That's why she approached you afterwards. That's why she married you. She built an entire relationship on a guilt that shouldn't have existed. Michael's hands trembled as the truth settled over him. Sarah hadn't killed Emma, but she'd believed she had, believed it so completely that she'd built their entire marriage on that false guilt, which meant everything between them, every moment, every word, was based on a delusion. But Thomas wasn't done. He pulled out another document. He said, "There's one more thing you need to know. Linda Carter's letter. She wrote one for each of you before she died. Sarah's letter... Michael, it changes everything. Your sister isn't who you think she is."
Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So if you're enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
Thomas slid 2 envelopes across the coffee shop table. Both were cream-colored, aged at the edges, with names written in shaky handwriting. Michael on one, Sarah on the other. "Your mother wrote these 3 months before she died," Thomas explained. "Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. She knew she didn't have much time. She made me promise I'd find you both and deliver these personally." Michael stared at the envelope with his name on it, but didn't reach for it. "Why didn't you deliver them sooner?" "Finding you was easy. Finding Sarah took longer. She'd moved several times, changed jobs frequently. By the time I tracked her to Chicago and realized she was living with you as your wife," Thomas shook his head. "I needed to understand the situation before I contacted either of you. That's when I started looking into the connection between Sarah and Emma's death." "And you found the CCTV footage?" "Among other things." Thomas tapped Sarah's envelope. "Read yours first. Then, if you're willing, I need you to read Sarah's. What Linda wrote to her, it's complicated, and it explains a lot about why Sarah did what she did." Michael picked up his envelope with numb fingers. The seal had been broken. Thomas had read it, of course. He pulled out several pages of lined paper covered in the same shaky handwriting as the envelope. "My dear Michael, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't know if you'll care about words from a mother who gave you away when you were just a baby.
but I'm dying, and I need you to understand why I made the choices I did. I was 16 when I got pregnant with you and your sister. Your father was 17, my high school boyfriend who ran the moment I told him. My parents were religious, strict. They gave me two options: give the babies up for adoption or be disowned. I was a child myself. I didn't know how to fight them. The pregnancy was difficult. Twins often are. When you were born, you first, then Sarah 8 minutes later, I held you both for exactly 10 minutes. That's all they let me have. 10 minutes to memorize your faces, to whisper that I loved you, to promise that I'd find you someday. But life doesn't work that way. I did try to find you over the years. When I turned 18 and had some legal standing. When I turned 25 and had saved some money. When I turned 35 and finally had the courage. Each time I hit dead ends, sealed records, privacy laws, a system designed to keep birth mothers away from the children they'd lost. I married eventually, had 2 other children, your half-brothers, though they don't know about you. I built a good life, or tried to, but you were always there, you and Sarah, the twins I'd held for 10 minutes and lost forever. Michael, I need you to know something about your sister. When I gave you up, the adoption agency separated you. They said it was better that way, that twins adopted together often struggled with identity issues, that separate families would give you each a better chance at normal lives. But the agency made a mistake. They placed you with a good family. I found that out later through a private investigator I hired when I was 30. The Carters were stable, loving, middle class. They gave you a good childhood. Sarah wasn't so lucky. The Walshes who adopted her divorced when she was 4. Her adoptive father disappeared, stopped paying support, stopped visiting. Her adoptive mother struggled with alcoholism. She spent 3 years in foster care between ages 7 and 10 before being adopted again, this time by a family that treated her more like domestic help than a daughter. I found all this out too late to do anything about it. By the time I tracked down the information, Sarah was already 18 and aging out of the system. I tried to find her then, to reach out, but she'd moved and left no forwarding address. I tell you this because I need you to understand your sister has been alone her entire life. No stable family, no real home, just a series of temporary places where she never quite belonged. When Thomas finds you both, and I pray that he does, I need you to be kind to her. Sarah has suffered in ways you probably haven't. Whatever choices she's made, whatever mistakes, please try to understand they came from a lifetime of abandonment. I'm sorry I couldn't be the mother you both deserved. I'm sorry I didn't fight harder to keep you. I'm sorry for everything you both have lost because of my weakness. If there's any way you can forgive me, even a little, I'd die more peacefully. All my love, Linda Carter. Thomas set down the letter, his eyes burning. He'd never thought much about his birth mother. The Carters who raised him had been good parents, loving and supportive. He'd always assumed his birth mother had been young and scared, making the best choice she could. He'd never felt abandoned. But Sarah? Read hers, Thomas said quietly, sliding the second envelope across the table. Michael hesitated. This is private. It's addressed to Sarah. Read it. Something in Thomas's tone made Michael open the envelope. Sarah's letter was shorter, the handwriting even shakier, as if Linda had been in more pain while writing it. My dear Sarah, I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know that. But I need to tell you what I learned about your life and how sorry I am that I couldn't protect you from it. I hired an investigator 10 years ago to find out what happened to you and Michael after the adoption.
What I learned about your childhood broke my heart. The Walshes, the foster homes, the second adoption that was barely better than servitude. You deserved so much more. I tried to find you when you turned 18. I wanted to offer you a home, a family, a mother who should have been there all along. But you disappeared into the system's cracks. I looked for years. Sarah, there's something else I need to tell you. Something I learned from the investigator that you might not know yourself. When you were 7 years old, living with your adoptive mother after the divorce, you were hospitalized. The records were sealed, but my investigator managed to get access. You'd attempted suicide, Sarah. You'd taken your adoptive mother's pills because you thought if you were gone, she'd have more money for alcohol and would stop being so angry. You were 7 years old, and you already thought the world would be better without you.
That knowledge has haunted me every day since I learned it. My daughter, my little girl who I held for 10 minutes, had suffered so much that she wanted to die before she'd even started living. The hospitalization report noted something else. You told the doctors you felt like half of you was missing, that you'd always felt incomplete, like you'd lost something important that you couldn't remember. You were describing twin loss, Sarah. You were missing Michael, even though you'd never consciously known he existed. I'm telling you this because I need you to understand something. Everything you've survived, everything you've endured, it wasn't your fault. You were a child who should have been protected and wasn't. The system failed you. Your adoptive families failed you. And I, most of all, failed you. But Sarah, you're not broken. You're not unworthy. You're not the burden those families made you feel like. You're my daughter. You're Michael's twin. You're part of a family that should have been there for you from the beginning. I know this letter might be coming too late. You might not want anything to do with me or with Michael. You might have built a life where you don't need anyone. But if there's any part of you that still feels incomplete, that still feels like something is missing, know that you have a brother who shares your DNA, your birthday, your original last name. You have blood family. Please find him, Sarah. Please let yourself have the connection you've been missing your whole life. Don't let my mistakes rob you of that forever. I love you. I'm so sorry I couldn't show you that when it mattered. Your mother, Linda Carter. Michael's hands were shaking as he set down the letter. The coffee shop noise, conversations, espresso machine, background music, all seemed distant and muffled. She's tried to kill herself, he whispered, at 7 years old. Thomas nodded. The adoption system failed her catastrophically, and she's carried that trauma her entire life. The DNA test, Michael said slowly, pieces falling into place. When Sarah did that ancestry test and found me, she wasn't stalking me, she was trying to find the missing piece, the twin she'd been grieving for without knowing it. Exactly. And when Emma died and Sarah blamed herself, even though it wasn't really her fault, she saw a chance to finally do something right, to save someone instead of being the person who needed saving. That's my assessment, Thomas said. Sarah saw you falling apart after Emma's death, and she made a choice. A terrible, misguided, illegal choice, but one that came from a lifetime of abandonment and trauma. Michael pressed his palms against his eyes. She shouldn't have done it. Shouldn't have lied to me, married me, let it go that far. No, she shouldn't have. But I understand why she did. Thomas said nothing, letting Michael work through it. The marriage can be annulled, Michael said finally. You said that was easy. Relatively. It will require some legal paperwork, discretion to avoid criminal charges for both of you. I have contacts who can help with that. What happens to Sarah? If this comes out, it won't come out if you don't want it to, Thomas assured him. The annulment can be handled quietly. As far as anyone needs to know, you discovered you were related through a DNA test, realized the mistake, and ended the marriage immediately. No harm, no foul, at least legally. But morally is between you and Sarah. Thomas closed his briefcase. I've done my job. I found you both. I delivered Linda's letters. The rest is up to you. Michael looked at the 2 letters on the table, his and Sarah's.
both written by a dying woman trying to fix what she'd broken 35 and half decades ago. "I need to think," Michael said. "Take your time. But, Michael, whatever you decide to do about Sarah, about your marriage, about all of this, remember what Linda wrote. Your sister has been alone her entire life. That doesn't excuse what she did, but it explains it, and sometimes understanding is the first step towards healing." Thomas left his business card on the table and walked down. Michael sat alone for a long time, staring at the letters. Other customers came and went. The barista changed shifts. The afternoon light shifted through the windows. Finally, Michael gathered the letters, put them carefully back in their envelopes, and walked out to his taxi. He didn't go home. Instead, he drove to Mercy Hospital, the place where he and Sarah had been born 35 years ago. He sat in the parking lot, staring at the building, trying to imagine what it had been like. Linda Carter, 16 years old and terrified, holding 2 babies she'd have to give away. Michael James Carter and Sarah Jane Carter, born 8 minutes apart, separated 10 months later, never knowing the other existed. Until Sarah found him. His phone buzzed. Sarah again. "Did you meet with Thomas? What did he tell you?" I typed back. "He told me the truth. All of it." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "I'm sorry for everything. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know I'm sorry." Michael stared at the message. Then he typed, "Come to Mercy Hospital, the parking lot. We need to talk. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Michael leaned back in his seat and closed his eyes. He thought about Emma, the real Emma, not the martyred saint that he'd built in his memory. Emma had been kind, yes, but also stubborn, opinionated. She had a temper when provoked. She was terrible at cooking and had once set off the fire alarm making toast. She was human, complex, real. And she was gone. Not because Sarah had killed her, but because life was random and cruel and sometimes people died for no good reason. Sarah hadn't killed Emma, but Sarah had killed our chance at any kind of normal relationship. She made choices based on trauma and guilt that trapped us both in an impossible situation. 20 minutes later, a blue Honda pulled into the parking lot. Sarah got out, looking small and fragile in jeans and an oversized sweater. She approached Michael's taxi slowly, as if expecting him to drive away. Michael unlocked the passenger door. Sarah got in, sitting as far from him as possible, her back pressed against the door. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her face pale. "Thomas showed me the CCTV footage. You didn't kill Emma. Your car had nothing to do with it. She stepped into traffic on her own." Sarah's breath hitched. "But I was there. If I had been following you, if I hadn't been watching."
"You'd have been somewhere else, and Emma still would have died." Michael's voice was firm. "You've been carrying guilt for something that wasn't your fault. Thomas confirmed it. The police report confirmed it. Emma's death was an accident, a tragedy, but an accident." Tears streamed down Sarah's face. "I've spent 3 years believing I murdered her." "I know." Michael pulled out the 2 letters and handed Sarah hers. "Thomas gave me this. From Linda, our birth mother. She died 6 months ago, but she wrote to both of us before she passed." Sarah took the envelope with shaking hands. "You read it?" "Yes." "That was meant for me." "I know. Read it now." Sarah opened the envelope and began reading. Michael watched her face as she absorbed Linda's words, the explanation of her childhood, the adoption failures, the hospitalization at 7 years old. When she reached the part about attempting suicide, Sarah made a choked sound and pressed her hand to her mouth. "I'd forgotten," she whispered. "I'd completely blocked that out." Trauma does that. Sarah kept reading, tears falling onto the paper. When she finished, she folded the letter carefully and held it against her chest. "She tried to find me." "She did, but it was too late." "For her, maybe, but not for us." Sarah looked at him, hope and fear warring in her expression. "What does that mean?" Michael took a deep breath. "It means I understand now why you did what you did. It doesn't make it right. It doesn't erase the fact that we committed incest, that our marriage is illegal, that you lied to me for 2 years. But I understand the context. You weren't trying to manipulate me or hurt me. You were trying to save me,
because you spent your entire life feeling like you couldn't save anyone, including yourself. I'm so sorry, Michael. I know you are. He paused. Thomas says the marriage can be annulled quietly. No criminal charges if we handle it discreetly. We can walk away from this like it never happened. Sarah nodded, wiping her eyes. That's what you want? To walk away? Michael looked out at Mercy Hospital. What I want is complicated. I want Emma back, but that's impossible. I want the last 3 years to have been different, but I can't change them. I want to not be married to my sister, and that at least I can fix. Okay. Sarah's voice was small. But here's what I've realized sitting here. Michael turned to face her. You're my sister, my twin. We shared a womb, we shared DNA, we were born 8 minutes apart, and then we were separated and spent 35 years living completely different lives, me with stability and support, you with trauma and abandonment. That's not fair. It's not right. And I can't fix your childhood, but I can be your brother now, if you want that. Sarah stared at him. You want to have a relationship after everything? Not as spouses, Michael said firmly. That ends immediately. We annul the marriage, we never speak of it again. But as siblings, yes. Linda was right in her letter. You've been alone your whole life. You don't have to be anymore. You have a brother, me. And I'd like to get to know my sister, the real Sarah, not the woman pretending to be my wife. Fresh tears spilled down Sarah's cheeks. I don't deserve that. Probably not, but I'm offering it anyway, with conditions. What conditions? First, you get therapy, real therapy, with a trauma specialist. You've been carrying damage from your childhood for decades, and you need professional help to process it. Sarah nodded. Okay. Second, complete honesty from now on. No more lies, no more secrets. If we're going to be siblings, it has to be built on truth. I can do that. Third, we don't live together. We need space and distance while we figure out what a sibling relationship looks like. You find your own place, I keep the apartment, and we meet for coffee or dinner like normal brothers and sisters do. That makes sense. Michael pulled out Thomas's business card. And fourth, you work with Thomas to properly grieve Linda. She was our mother. She made terrible choices, but she spent decades trying to fix them. We both deserve to acknowledge that and process it. Sarah took the card. You really want to do this? After everything I've done to you? I don't know if I want to, but I think I need to. Emma's gone. Our marriage is ending. My whole life just imploded. But I've spent 3 years grieving and being alone. Maybe it's time to try something different. Maybe it's time to have family. Sarah let out a shaky laugh. This is the weirdest conversation I've ever had. We're annulling our marriage because we're twins. I don't think anything tops that for weird. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Sarah said quietly, I really am sorry, Michael, for all of it, for following you, for lying to you, for trapping you in this nightmare. I know. Michael started the engine. Come on, let's go back to the apartment. We need to start making calls. To Thomas, to lawyers, to therapists. We have a lot to untangle. And then what? And then we figure out how to be brother and sister. It won't be easy. It'll probably be messy and complicated and painful, but I think we owe it to Linda and to ourselves to try. Sarah nodded, buckling her seatbelt. As Michael pulled out of the parking lot, he glanced at Mercy Hospital one last time. That's where their story had begun. 2 babies born 8 minutes apart, loved for 10 minutes, then separated for 35 years. Now they had a chance to write a different ending. Not the one either of them had imagined, and certainly not a happy one yet, but maybe eventually a healing one. 6 months later, Michael sat in the same coffee shop where Thomas had shown him the CCTV footage, but this time Sarah sat across from him, not as his wife, but as his sister. The annulment had been finalized 3 weeks ago. Sarah had her own apartment, a new therapist, and for the first time in her life, a sense of belonging. They met twice a week, learning each other's stories, sharing memories, building something real. Then Sarah's phone buzzed. She went pale reading the message. Michael, there's something else I didn't tell you about the night Emma died.
Michael set down his coffee cup slowly. Sarah? No. I need to tell you this. Sarah's hands trembled around her phone. I thought I could let it go,
But my therapist says secrets are what got us into this mess. Complete honesty, remember? That was your condition. The coffee shop suddenly felt too warm, too crowded. Michael could hear every conversation around them, every scrape of chairs on tile, every hiss of the espresso machine. If this is about Emma, it is, Sarah set her phone face down on the table. That message was from an old email address I used 3 years ago. Someone just replied to something I sent back then. Michael's stomach dropped. What did you send? The night Emma died? After I saw the accident? After I drove away? I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing it over and over, so I did something stupid. I went online and tried to find out more about her, about who she was, why you loved her. I found her Facebook profile. Lots of people looked at Emma's social media after she died, Michael said, though unease prickled down his spine. That's not... I didn't just look, Michael. I sent her a message at 2 a.m., 3 hours after she died, before the news had even identified her body publicly. I sent a message to a dead woman's Facebook account. Michael stared at his sister. What did you say? Sarah pulled up her phone and opened Facebook Messenger. She turned the screen toward Michael. The message thread was from 3 years ago, sent to Emma Richardson's account. Sarah Walsh, 12:47 a.m. I'm so sorry. I was there. I saw what happened. It's my fault. I should have stopped. I should have helped. I'm so sorry. Michael's blood ran cold. Jesus Christ, Sarah. I was in shock, Sarah whispered. I wasn't thinking clearly. I just needed to apologize to her, even though she was already gone. I sent it, and then I deactivated that account the next day because I was terrified someone would trace it back to me. And someone just replied 3 years later? Sarah nodded and swiped to show the new message, received 20 minutes ago. Emma Richardson, 3:32 p.m. Who is this? How did you have access to my sister's account? Michael's world tilted. Her sister. Emma had a sister? Sarah's voice cracked. You never mentioned. Half-sister, Michael corrected, his mind racing. Julia, 10 years younger. They weren't close, different fathers. Julia lived with her dad in Wisconsin. Emma barely talked about her because the relationship was complicated. I met Julia once at her father's funeral. She was maybe 16 then. She would be 19 now, Sarah calculated. And she just accessed Emma's Facebook account. Michael's hands tightened into fists. Why would she be looking at messages from 3 years ago? I don't know, but Michael, what if she traces that account to me? What if she figures out I was there that night? You didn't kill Emma, Michael said firmly. Thomas proved that. The CCTV showed. But Julia doesn't know that, and I sent a message saying it was my fault, that I should have stopped. If she goes to the police with this... Michael's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered it warily. Hello? Is this Michael Carter? A young woman's voice, uncertain. Who's asking? This is Julia Richardson, Emma Richardson's sister. A pause. I need to talk to you about my sister's death. Can we meet? Michael closed his eyes. Of course. Julia had probably reached out to him too, trying to understand the cryptic message sent to Emma's account. How did you get my number? It's still in Emma's phone contacts. I have her old phone. Mom saved all her stuff. I've been going through it because... Julia's voice wavered. It's been 3 years, but I still have questions about what happened that night. And then I found this message on her Facebook from someone who was there, and I thought maybe you'd know who sent it. Sarah was watching Michael with wide, terrified eyes. What makes you think I'd know? Michael asked carefully. Because the message was sent from a Sarah Walsh, and I did some searching online, and there's a Sarah Walsh who lives in Chicago who's listed in some records as your wife or ex-wife. I'm confused, but I thought maybe you'd know who she is and why she was there when Emma died. Michael felt the walls closing in. Julia, this is complicated. My sister is dead. Julia's voice hardened. I was 16 when she died. Everyone told me it was just an accident, that she slipped and fell into traffic. But this message says someone was there, someone who thinks it was their fault.
I deserve to know the truth." Michael looked at Sarah. She mouthed, "I'm sorry." "Where are you?" Michael asked Julia. "I drove down from Wisconsin this morning. I'm at a hotel near downtown Chicago." "Give me the address. I'll meet you in an hour. And Julia, Sarah will be with me. She deserves a chance to explain." After Julia gave him the address and hung up, Michael set down his phone. "We're meeting her." "Michael, I can't." "Yes, you can." His voice was gentle but firm. "You spent 3 years believing you killed Emma. You built our relationship on that guilt. Thomas proved that you didn't cause the accident. But now Julia is asking questions, and she deserves answers, real answers, not more secrets. What if she hates me?" "She might." Michael stood up. "But we're going to tell her the truth anyway. All of it. Because that's what we should have done in the beginning." The hotel was a mid-range chain near Millennium Park. Julia Richardson was waiting in the lobby, and Michael recognized her immediately, despite not having seen her in 7 years. She'd been a gangly teenager at her father's funeral. Now she was a young woman, tall and serious-faced, with Emma's dark hair and sharp cheekbones. She stood up when Michael approached. "Michael." "Julia." He gestured to Sarah. "This is Sarah Walsh, the person who sent the message to Emma's Facebook." Julia's gaze shifted to Sarah and her expression hardened. "You were there the night my sister died?" "Yes." Sarah's voice was barely audible. "Can we sit down, please? I need to explain." They found a quiet corner of the lobby, sitting in armchairs arranged around a low table. Julia kept her arms crossed, defensive. Sarah looked like she might bolt at any second. Michael sat between them, feeling like a mediator in a situation that had no good resolution. "Start from the beginning," Julia said. "Why were you there that night?" Sarah took a shaky breath and began talking. She explained everything: the DNA test that revealed Michael was her twin, the months of following him from a distance, the night she'd watched Michael and Emma at dinner. She explained how she'd followed Emma toward the pharmacy, how she'd seen Emma fall into the street, how she'd driven away in panic.
"I thought I caused it," Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. "I thought my car startled her and made her step backward. I've lived with that guilt for 3 years. That's why I sent the message. I needed to apologize, even though she was already gone." Julia listened, her face unreadable. When Sarah finished, she turned to Michael. "And you married her, knowing she was there when Emma died?" "I didn't know," Michael said. "Not until 6 months ago. Sarah never told me. She approached me after Emma's death and we started a relationship. We got married, and then I found out the truth. That she's my sister. That she'd been there that night." Julia's eyes widened. "Your sister?" "Twin sister," Michael clarified. "We were separated as babies and adopted by different families. Neither of us knew the other existed until Sarah did a DNA test." "So you married your sister?" Julia's voice was flat with disbelief. "We didn't know," Sarah said quickly. "I mean, I knew, but Michael didn't, and I—" She stopped, realizing how insane it sounded. Julia stood up abruptly. "This is crazy. This is absolutely insane." "Julia, wait." Michael stood too. "My sister died 3 years ago." Julia's voice shook. "And you're telling me some woman was stalking you, witnessed Emma's death, and then married you while being your sister? What kind of sick—" "There's more," Michael interrupted. "Please just sit down. There's something else you need to know about that night." Julia hesitated, then sat back down slowly. Michael pulled out his phone and opened the video file Thomas had sent him, the CCTV footage from the night Emma died. A private investigator pulled this from a store across the street. The police never looked at it because they'd already ruled the death accidental, but this shows what really happened. He handed the phone to Julia. She watched the footage in silence. Emma walking along the sidewalk, Sarah's car parking normally at the curb, Emma continuing to walk without reacting to the car, then Emma turning back, stepping off the curb, crossing the street while looking at her phone. The moment before the bus hit, just off camera. She watched it 3 times. Then she set the phone down carefully. Emma wasn't startled by a car. No, Michael confirmed. She stepped into traffic on her own, Sarah didn't cause the accident. It was just an accident. But Sarah thought she did, Julia said slowly. Yes. Julia looked at Sarah with an expression that was hard to read. Not quite sympathy, but not anger either. You've been living with guilt for 3 years over something you didn't actually do. Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice. And you married Michael because you felt responsible for his grief. It's more complicated than that, Sarah whispered. But yes, essentially. Julia leaned back in her chair, processing. The lobby bustled around them, guests checking in, suitcases rolling across tile, the ding of elevator bells. Normal people doing normal things while they sat in this bubble of dysfunction. Finally, Julia spoke. I need to tell you something about Emma. About that night. Michael frowned. What do you mean? I talked to Emma that afternoon. We hadn't spoken in months because we'd had a fight, but she called me out of the blue. She sounded off, distracted. She kept saying she needed to tell you something important, Michael, that she'd been keeping a secret and it was eating her alive. Michael's chest tightened. What secret? She wouldn't tell me. She said she needed to tell you first, but she was scared you'd hate her for it. Julia's eyes glistened. I've spent 3 years wondering if that secret had something to do with why she died. If she was so distracted by whatever she needed to tell you that she didn't see the bus. The police report said she was looking at her phone, Sarah offered quietly. She was always on her phone, but that day she was different, agitated. When I asked her what was wrong, she said, I made a mistake, Julia, a big one, and I don't know if Michael will forgive me. Michael felt the ground had dropped out from under him. Emma had never told me any of this. She died before she could. Julia pulled out her own phone and scrolled through old messages. Look, she texted me at 9:15 that night, about a half an hour before she died. I'm going to tell him tonight. Wish me luck. She showed Michael the screen. There it was, Emma's last message to her sister. What was she going to tell me? Michael asked, though. He wasn't sure he wanted to know. I didn't know then. But after Emma died, I went through some of her stuff when Mom wasn't looking. I found a journal. Julia reached into her bag and pulled out a small notebook, worn and water-stained. Mom doesn't know I have this. I took it because I needed to understand what happened, and I found entries from the weeks before she died. Julia opened the journal to a page marked with a torn piece of paper. Read this. It's from 3 days before the accident. Michael took the journal. Emma's handwriting, familiar and achingly painful to see. March 12th. I can't keep lying to Michael. It's been eating me alive for 6 months. I thought I could bury it, pretend it never happened, move forward. But every time he looks at me with those trusting eyes, I feel like I'm going to vomit. James from the hospital has been texting me again. He wants to talk about what happened. There's nothing to talk about. I made a mistake. I got drunk at the hospital Christmas party. Michael was working a night shift, and I let James drive me home. And then I let him come inside. And then I let things go too far. It was one night, one stupid, alcohol-fueled night, and I've been lying about it ever since. Michael deserves to know. He deserves the chance to decide if he still wants to marry someone who cheated on him. But I'm so scared he'll leave me. And I love him so much. I don't want to lose him. But I can't keep this secret anymore. It's killing me. I'm going to tell him this week. Whatever happens, at least I'll have been honest. Michael's hands shook as he lowered the journal. Emma had cheated on him. 6 months before she died, she'd been unfaithful, and she'd been carrying that guilt for half a year. She was going to tell him that night, Julia said softly. That's why she was so distracted. That's why she texted me. She was building up the courage. Sarah made a small sound of distress. She was suffering just like I was. And she died before she could tell the truth. Julia finished, just like you almost did, Sarah. You were both carrying these massive secrets, letting them destroy you from the inside. Michael sat frozen, trying to process this new information. Emma, perfect, kind, beloved Emma,
had been unfaithful, had been planning to confess, had died before she could. Part of him felt betrayed all over again, but another part, a larger part, just felt sad. Emma had made a mistake and had been tortured by it, just like Sarah had believed she made a mistake and had been tortured by it. They'd both been drowning in guilt, and neither had reached out for help until it was too late.
Why are you telling us this? Mikhail asked Julia. Because I've spent 3 years idealizing my sister, Julia said, making her into this perfect person who died tragically. But she wasn't perfect. She was human. She made mistakes. And I think you need to know that, Mikhail, because you've been grieving a saint instead of a real person. Julia turned to Sarah. And you need to know it because you've been punishing yourself for 3 years over an accident that wasn't your fault. You've been carrying Emma's death like it was murder. But Emma was carrying her own guilt that night. Maybe that's why she was distracted. Maybe that's why she stepped into the street without looking. Not because of you, but because of her own demons. The three of them sat in heavy silence. Finally, Mikhail spoke. Thomas, the investigator who found the CCTV footage, he said something to me 6 months ago. He said that sometimes we build entire lives on guilt that shouldn't exist, that we punish ourselves for things that aren't our fault, or that aren't as bad as we think they are. Emma punished herself for 6 months over one mistake, Julia agreed, and it might have cost her life. I punished myself for 3 years, Sarah added quietly, and it cost Mikhail and me any chance at a normal relationship. So what now? Julia asked. You two are siblings who got married by accident. Emma's dead and she cheated on you before she died. Where does that leave us? Mikhail looked at his sister, then at Julia. It leaves us with the truth, finally, all of it, no matter how messy or painful. And what do we do with the truth? Sarah asked. We stop letting it destroy us, Mikhail said. Emma's gone. I loved her, and she loved me, and she made a mistake she never got to make right. I'm going to have to find a way to forgive her for that, and forgive myself for turning her into something she wasn't. He turned to Sarah. You've spent 3 years trying to atone for something you didn't do. The annulment is almost finalized. We're going to be siblings, real siblings, and we're going to build something honest. It won't erase what happened, but it's a start. Then he looked at Julia. And you've been carrying questions for 3 years. Now you have answers. Not good answers, but real ones. Emma died because life is random and tragic. Not because of Sarah, not because of her guilt over the affair, just because sometimes people step into the street at the wrong moment. Julia nodded slowly. I spent so long being angry at the randomness of it, angry that there was no one to blame. There isn't anyone to blame. That's the hardest part. Julia stood up and extended her hand to Sarah. Thank you for telling me the truth. It doesn't make Emma's death hurt less, but it makes it make sense. Sort of. Sarah shook her hand, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry I didn't come forward 3 years ago. I should have told the police I was there. I should have... You were in shock, Julia interrupted, and you were carrying your own trauma. I'm not saying I forgive you completely. I need time to process all of this, but I understand why you did what you did. Julia grabbed her bag and headed toward the elevator, then stopped and turned back. Mikhail, Emma really did love you. Whatever else she did, whatever mistakes she made, she loved you. The journal makes that clear. She was going to tell you the truth because she loved you enough to risk losing you. I know, Mikhail said quietly. After Julia disappeared into the elevator, Mikhail and Sarah sat together in the lobby for a long time, not speaking. The revelation about Emma's affair hung between them, adding another layer of complexity to an already impossible situation. Finally, Sarah broke the silence. Does it change how you feel about Emma? Mikhail considered. Yes and no. I'm hurt, angry, but also relieved in a strange way. I've spent 3 years worshiping a memory, building Emma into this perfect person who could never be replaced. But she wasn't perfect. She was human. She made mistakes,
And I think knowing that makes her feel more real somehow. More forgivable, Sarah added. Yeah. Do you forgive her? Mikhail thought about it. I think I will, eventually. Right now it's too fresh, but I understand being human and making mistakes. God knows I've made enough of them. Sarah gave a bitter laugh. We both have. They left the hotel and walked toward where Mikhail had parked his taxi. The Chicago streets were busy with evening traffic, people heading home from work, couples going to dinner, normal life continuing around them. I start my new job next week, Sarah mentioned, at a bookstore in Lincoln Park. It's just retail, but it's a start, something that's mine. That's good. You're building your own life. That's what you need. My therapist says I've spent my whole life trying to be part of other people's stories instead of writing my own. Sounds like a good therapist. They reached the taxi. Mikhail unlocked it, but didn't get in immediately. Sarah, I want to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Okay? In our marriage, before I found out the truth, were there any moments where you were happy? Where it felt real, even though it was built on lies? Sarah considered carefully. Yes, when we'd watch movies together and you'd fall asleep on the couch, when you'd bring home takeout and we'd eat in comfortable silence, when you'd tell me stories about your passengers. Those moments felt real to me. Me too, Mikhail admitted, and that's what makes this so complicated, because part of me wants to hate you for what you did, but another part remembers those moments and knows they mattered, even if they shouldn't have existed. What do we do with that? Sarah asked. We don't know yet. Maybe we just acknowledge it and move forward. We can't have those moments anymore as spouses, but maybe we can have different moments as siblings. I'd like that. Mikhail opened the driver's door. I'll see you Thursday? Coffee at the usual place? I'll be there. Sarah started walking toward the bus stop, then turned back. Mikhail, Emma really did love you. Thank you for not giving up on me, for giving me a chance to be your sister even after everything. We're family, Mikhail said simply, for better or worse. And unlike our marriage, being siblings isn't something we can annul. Sarah smiled, a real smile, small but genuine. Then she walked away. Mikhail sat in his taxi and pulled out his phone. He scrolled to Emma's contact, he'd never deleted it, and looked at her last text to him, sent the afternoon she died. Love you. See you tonight. We need to talk.
She'd been planning to confess, to risk everything for honesty. Michael typed out a message she knew would never be delivered. I forgive you. I understand. And I'm sorry you died carrying that weight alone. He didn't send it, just held the phone for a moment, then deleted the message. Some conversations could never be finished. Some forgiveness had to happen in silence. Michael started the taxi and pulled into traffic, heading home to an apartment that would soon be just his. Sarah would sign the last of the annulment papers next week. Legally, their marriage would cease to exist, erased as if it had never happened. But Michael knew better. It had happened. All of it. The lies, the love, the betrayal, the truth. You couldn't erase 2 years of your life just because they were built on a foundation of trauma and misconception. But you could learn from them. You could acknowledge the mistakes and move forward with eyes open. As Michael drove through Chicago's evening streets, he thought about Linda Carter, the 16-year-old girl who'd given birth to twins and held them for 10 minutes before losing them forever. She'd spent 35 years trying to fix that loss, and she'd died before seeing her children reunited. But maybe she'd given them something anyway. Her letters had forced Michael and Sarah to confront the truth. Her death had set in motion the investigation that revealed what really happened the night Emma died. Linda had tried to protect them even from beyond the grave. Michael made a decision. Tomorrow, he'd visit Linda's grave. Thomas had given him the location. He'd bring flowers. He'd tell her that he and Sarah had found each other, that they were broken but healing, and that her final wish had come true, even if imperfectly. And maybe he'd thank her for the 10 minutes she'd held them, for the love she tried to give, even when she had no choice but to let go. Family, Michael realized, was complicated. It wasn't just biology or legal documents. It was choice and forgiveness, and showing up even when it was hard. He and Sarah would never have a normal sibling relationship. They'd started in the worst possible way, built on lies and illegal marriage and misplaced guilt. But they could have something real now, something honest. It wouldn't erase the past, but it might redeem it. 1 year later, Michael stood at Linda Carter's grave with flowers in his hand, and Sarah beside him. They came every month now, talking to a mother they'd never known, telling her about their lives as siblings rebuilding from catastrophic mistakes. Sarah was thriving. New job, new apartment, genuine friendships. Michael had started dating again, slowly learning to trust. They were healing. But today was different. Today, Thomas had called with news that would change everything one final time. Michael, there's something about Linda's death you need to know, and about why she really hired me to find you. Thomas Reed sat across from Michael and Sarah in the same coffee shop where this had all begun a year ago. But this time, the atmosphere was different. Michael and Sarah looked like siblings now, sitting comfortably together, finishing each other's sentences occasionally, the ease of family that had been built slowly over months of therapy and honest conversations. "I've been debating whether to tell you this," Thomas began, setting a worn folder on the table. "Linda Carter hired me to find you both, yes, but there was more to it than I initially revealed." Michael exchanged glances with Sarah. "What do you mean?" "Linda didn't just want to apologize and leave you letters. She was trying to prevent something." Thomas opened the folder, revealing medical documents and handwritten notes. Linda discovered she had cancer 2 years before she died, stage 4 pancreatic cancer, very aggressive. But here is what I didn't tell you. During her treatment, she met another patient, a woman named Helen Walsh. Sarah's face went white. "That was my adoptive mother's name." "I know." Thomas pulled out a photograph. 2 women in a hospital waiting room, both bald from chemotherapy, both smiling despite obvious illness. They became friends during treatment. Helen was dying too, liver failure from decades of alcoholism. And in those final months, Helen told Linda everything about the little girl she'd adopted and failed. About Sarah. Sarah's hands trembled. "She talked about me?" "Extensively." Thomas pulled out more notes, pages of Linda's handwriting, shaky but determined. Helen was eaten alive by guilt. She told Linda about the divorce, the drinking, the foster care. But she also told Linda something else, that Sarah had tracked down her birth family through DNA, that Sarah had found a twin brother, that Sarah had gone to Chicago. Michael leaned forward. "Linda knew Sarah had found me?" "Linda knew Sarah was looking for you, yes, but Helen died before Sarah actually made contact with you, Michael. Helen never knew about the marriage or what happened after, but she told Linda enough that Linda became worried." Thomas pulled out the final document, a letter, this one addressed to him, marked to be opened only if Michael and Sarah have been found and the truth revealed. "I left this with me before she died. She made me promise not to open it unless I'd successfully located you both and confirmed your relationship. I opened it last week." Thomas slid the letter across the table. "I think you both need to read it." Michael picked up the letter, Sarah leaned close, and they read together. "Dear Thomas, if you're reading this, you've found my children, and they know the truth about each other. Thank you for that. I can die easier knowing they're not alone. But I need to confess something to you, and through you to Michael and Sarah. I've known for a year that Sarah found Michael. Helen Walsh told me before she died. She told me Sarah had tracked down her birth family through DNA, that Sarah had found a twin brother, that Sarah had gone to Chicago. But I was terrified. You see, I'd hired a different investigator 10 years ago when I first started looking for my children. That investigator found Michael, found that he'd been raised well by the Carters, had a good life, was engaged to a lovely woman. The investigator also found Sarah, found her history of foster care, abandonment, trauma. And the investigator warned me.
He said that twins separated at birth and reunited as adults often struggle with something called genetic sexual attraction. It's a documented phenomenon where blood relatives who meet as adults, having never formed familial bonds as children, sometimes develop romantic or sexual feelings for each other. It's not their fault. It's psychology, biology, the brain confusing genetic familiarity for romantic connection. I didn't believe it could happen to my children. I thought love and morality would be enough to prevent it. But when Helen told me Sarah found Michael and was planning to meet him, I panicked. I hired Thomas immediately to track them down, to intervene if necessary. But my cancer progressed faster than expected. I died before Thomas could locate them. Michael and Sarah, if you're reading this, please understand, if something inappropriate happened between you, it wasn't because you're bad people. It was because you were two traumatized adults trying to fill holes in your lives with the only blood family you had ever known. The system failed you. I failed you. And your brains, desperate for connection, confused familial love for something else. I'm so sorry I couldn't protect you from this. But I also want you to know you can heal from this. You can be siblings in a healthy way. It will take time, therapy, forgiveness of yourselves and each other, but it's possible. I've left money in a trust for you both. Not a fortune, but enough to help with therapy, with starting over, with building the lives you deserve. Thomas has the details. My final request, don't let shame destroy you. What happened between you happened because of circumstances neither of you controlled. Learn from it, grow from it, but don't let it define you. You're more than your worst mistakes. You're my children, and I love you. Linda. Sarah was crying silently. Michael's own eyes burned. Thomas spoke quietly. There is money, $200,000, split between you. Linda saved for years, wanting to leave you both something. The trust paperwork is ready whenever you want to claim it. Michael set down the letter carefully. Genetic sexual attraction. It's real. It's documented in adoption reunion cases, sibling reunions, parent-child reunions, where they meet as adults. The brain recognizes genetic familiarity and sometimes interprets it as a romantic attraction because there's no established familial relationship to override it. So we're not, Sarah struggled for words, we're not perverts? This wasn't some sick. You're trauma survivors who got caught in a psychological phenomenon that's been documented for decades. It doesn't excuse the choices you made, but it explains them. And more importantly, it means you can heal from them. Michael thought about the past year, the therapy sessions where he'd struggled to understand how he could have married his sister, the shame that had eaten at him, the feeling that he was fundamentally broken. I never felt romantically attracted to Sarah even when we were married. I felt comfortable, safe, like something was finally complete. But it wasn't romantic love. It was something else. Familial connection. Thomas suggested your twin bond trying to reassert itself, but getting confused because you'd never formed it as children.
Sarah nodded. I never felt like I was in love with Michael either. I felt responsible for him, protective, like I needed to keep him safe. But I thought that was love because I'd never had real family before. I didn't know what it was supposed to feel like. And that confusion, combined with trauma and guilt and desperation, led you both to make choices that felt right in the moment, but were ultimately harmful, Thomas concluded. That's what Linda understood. That's why she wanted you to know it wasn't your fault. Michael looked at his sister, really looked at her. Over the past year, as they'd rebuilt their relationship as siblings, he'd noticed how different it felt from their marriage. The comfort was still there, but it was cleaner now, simpler. There was no confusion, no discomfort, no shame. Just family. We're okay, he said to Sarah. We're going to be okay. Sarah managed a smile through her tears. Yeah, we are. Thomas closed his folder.
The trust money is yours to claim whenever you're ready. Linda's will also specified that she wanted to be buried in Mercy Hospital Cemetery, near where you were both born. She wanted you to have a place to visit her if you chose to. We visit every month. We have been for a year. She would have liked that. Thomas stood. My job here is officially done. You have each other, you have resources to continue healing, and you have the truth. All of it. The whole complicated, messy truth. After Thomas left, Michael and Sarah sat together in silence. The coffee shop bustled around them, people typing on laptops, having business meetings, first dates, laughing nervously. Normal people, living normal lives. $200,000, Sarah said finally. That's a lot. Michael saved for 35 years. She was trying to take care of us even though she never got to raise us. What are you going to do with your half? Michael thought about it. Keep driving taxi. It's good work, honest work, but maybe I'll take some classes, figure out what I actually want to do with my life, instead of just surviving. I'm going to save most of mine, Sarah decided. Build a real foundation. But maybe I'll travel a little. See places I've never been. Figure out who Sarah Carter actually is when she's not defined by trauma or guilt. Sarah Carter, Michael smiled. You kept the name. It's my name. Our name. The one we should have had all along. She paused. Michael, do you think Linda's watching us somehow, knowing that we found each other? I don't know if I believe in that, Michael admitted, but I hope so. I hope she knows we're not perfect, but we're trying. We're being honest. We're being siblings the right way now. She'd probably be proud of that. Yeah, I think she would. They finished their coffee and walked out together into Chicago's autumn afternoon. The city had changed around them over the past year. New buildings going up, old ones coming down, the constant evolution of urban life. Michael and Sarah had changed too. They weren't the broken, desperate people who'd made terrible choices out of trauma and confusion. They were siblings now. Real siblings, with boundaries and honesty and genuine affection that wasn't confused with anything else. Same time next week? Sarah asked. Same time, Michael confirmed. And then the Sunday we visit Linda's grave? I'll bring flowers. They hugged briefly, the comfortable, casual hug of family, and went their separate ways. Sarah toward the bookstore where she worked, Michael toward his taxi down the street. As Michael drove through the city, he thought about everything that had happened. Emma's death, Sarah's misplaced guilt, their illegal marriage, the revelations, the annulment, the slow rebuilding. It had been the most painful, complicated year of his life, but it had also been healing. Michael had learned that people were complex, that mistakes could be catastrophic but also survivable, that family wasn't just biology. It was choice and commitment and showing up even when it was hard. He'd learned to forgive Emma for her affair, understanding that she'd been human and flawed like everyone else. He'd learned to forgive Sarah for lying, understanding that her choices came from a lifetime of abandonment and a psychological phenomenon neither of them had understood. And slowly, painfully, he'd learned to forgive himself. The taxi rolled through familiar streets. Michael had driven these routes thousands of times over the past 4 years. But now they felt different. Not heavy with grief, not shadowed by lies, just routes through a city where he lived, worked, and was slowly building something real. His phone buzzed with a text from Marita, someone he'd been on 3 dates with, a physical therapist with a kind smile who knew his whole story and hadn't run away. Still on for dinner Friday? Michael smiled and texted back. Absolutely. Life was moving forward. Not perfectly, not without scars, but forward. That evening, Michael made his usual stop at Mercy Hospital, not to work, just to sit in the parking lot and think. It had become a ritual, his way of acknowledging where everything had begun. 2 babies born, 8 minutes apart, Helen for 10 minutes, separated for 35 years. And now, finally, brother and sister in the way they should have been from the start.
Michael thought about Linda's letter. Her understanding, her forgiveness, her insistence that we were more than our worst mistakes. She was right. Michael started the engine and drove home, ready for whatever came next. The past couldn't be changed. The mistakes couldn't be unmade. But the future was still unwritten. And for the first time in 4 years, Michael was actually looking forward to it.
Up next, 2 more incredible stories are waiting for you right on your screen. If you enjoyed this one, you won't want to miss these. Just click to watch and don't forget to subscribe.